My guest tonight for Unraveling Religion is Graham Sears, and I just would like to welcome Graham.
Thanks, Joel. It's nice to be with you.
We've done a few takes, so...
It's still nice to be with you.
Well, thank you. But before we started the show, Graham and I were speaking about some of my influences, and I was wondering if, Graham, you could offer some of your influences. What are some of your influences?
Wow. Well, I'm 55, so I probably could look back on more, of those types of things than you. And there are a lot of them from all sides of issues, really. But I might start by saying that I was brought up in a Christian home with church-going brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and grandparents, and read the Bible, and so that was an early influence. It's an influence that I've completely thrown off, I think. But just looking back on some of the early years, I think one of the first influences that I remember strongly impacting my attitudes about religion were in my high school. As a 9th grader, we had a course, Comparative World Religions, followed the next semester by a course on ethics. And those two semesters really sort of coalesced for me, I think, ideas that had already been emerging as a young person, but and then since high school, I've just tried to read as much as I could. I mean, I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I was sitting on a train once and heard someone talking about Richard Oppenheimer when he saw the atomic bomb detonate in 1945. His first thought was a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita, and I.
Do you recall that?
Yes, I do. The quote was, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds." Yeah. So I thought I'd better read that book, and I did. But I had read other books by that time. That was in my late teens or early 20s. Anyway, so many influences. Just the world's record of history of ideas. Fictional literature deals with religion. Some of the great works address it directly and indirectly. But then I got into formal reading when I was older. Philosophy, the history of religion, theology, the Bible. I read the Koran more recently than before because of world trends and events. Sure. But it would be too difficult to really develop any kind of analytical framework for the influences that play in my opinions on religion. Just many, many, many. But what I try to do is call the best minds, the smartest folks, just sort of pick from their work and their ideas. And my memory is pretty good, so I never have the sense that these are my ideas in any right at all. Just a collection of really smart folks and their works. So, but I could talk about some of my very early sort of autonomous musings on religion. Really early on, I was upset that the Bible in particular sort of left out my mother and sister and grandmother.
Yeah.
And then I remember reading very clearly, and their stories are still in there if you want to go and read them, how to go about selling your daughters into sexual slavery. And it's not only not forbidden, but there's a kind of a how-to approach in a lot of the books of the Old Testament, how to, the rules of the deal.
Yeah.
Actually selling female children into slavery, or in Leviticus, if a girl is not a virgin on her wedding night, you might know the end of this story too. You murder her on her father's doorstep.
So you take issue with that?
Well, it occurred to me that this might not be the greatest moral teaching
Yeah.
possible. It
Yeah.
might not even be good moral teaching, frankly. And then right after the treatment of women and the lack of representation at the upper end of religious texts for women, there's the killing of villages and actually the entire population of the planet in one story of the Bible. So it right away it struck me as this can't be the best way to approach moral decision making, and so I had to pretty quickly realize that I think we're making it up as we go, and we gotta kind of do it. So I've taken a pretty strong approach against the position that religion holds apparently in the popular culture in America. It's just silly, and you hear all kinds of support for it from various directions, and the founding fathers they weren't Christians at all. I mean, I could share some quotes from, Thomas Jefferson just blasts Christianity, calls the God of the Christians this vengeful, horrible thing, and Sam Adams at one point prepared some sort of formal document to present to, I think, a country in South America, but it said they were trying to develop an alliance with, I wish I could remember the specific country, but he wrote that America is and it was an Islamic country, a Muslim country, so he wrote that America was in no way a religious nation, that it saw itself as completely non-ideological in terms of religion, and submitted it, and the entire Congress of the American states signed it without a single protest, and so clearly every senator in the country in maybe it was 1803 or 4 or something, was of the same opinion. So anyway, big problem with some of these formal religions, and
but yet
yes.
I know in speaking with you, Graham, that you believe in ethics, human ethics.
Of course, sure.
Yeah.
I actually believe it's probably the wrong word. I'm not big on that word, believe, but I'm a strong advocate of moral awareness. An attempt to make the best decisions we can make, regarding our behavior and our relations with our brothers and sisters.
Sure.
For sure. So I just don't think that religion has anything to do with establishing moral, laws or precepts. We just talked about some of the Bible's opinions thereon.
Yeah.
Clearly, that's not. We safely ignore half of the Old Testament now. We obviously don't beat our slaves. If in the Old Testament, it's Exodus actually. You beat a slave badly enough, if he dies within 24 hours, that's a problem for you. If it's more than 24 hours, it's fine. Nowhere in the New Testament does Christ repudiate slavery. In fact, Christ tells slaves in several places to treat their masters the way that he asks their masters to behave towards him. The slaveholders in the South knew that they had the theological argument on their side. The Bible's a virtual mandate for slavery. And if there's anything that we've achieved in modernity, on the planet, ethically, if there's a single great victory that
Sure.
humans have won, I would think it might be the elimination of formally anyways, of slavery. That was not done by paying more attention to our holy books. The Koran is just as bad. I can't speak for too many of the Eastern
So it's
traditions.
kind of a collective conscious awareness.
Well, I think it is. I think we're taking what we consider to be the right behaviors. We're choosing ourselves, and it's clearly not any God-given set of rules. We are making the decisions ourselves. Even religious folks who've chosen not to murder their daughters, as they were commanded in the Bible, they're editing the Bible based on their own decent sensibilities. I mean, the door to modern ethics doesn't open from the inside with respect to religion. You can't be in the religious house and get to the place we've got to today with slavery and hopefully with women's rights. You had to get outside and go from there, because
see it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, if you're inside the house of Christianity, you're literally inside. You are murdering your daughters. You are committing genocide. You're taking your son for a walk and telling him you're going to kill him because God has asked you to do so. That's not the kind of walk I want to take with my son. I think that's actually the kind of thing that people should be, incarcerated for, not deified for. But anyway, so this morality thing doesn't come from religion. It comes, even very young children, even primates demonstrate moral actions and behaviors and sensibilities, and it's just not something that we need religion to provide for us. We're smart enough and sensitive enough to know not to murder our daughters or sell them into slavery or all these other things. We can do that, and it's not as if God needed to give the Canaanites a very short list of what to kill people for. I mean, right. It's not like that's some great achievement. Just only kill in these circumstances. Not a virgin, slave talk. If your children talk back to you, the Bible says kill them. Kill them. If they insult you, kill them. It just can't be the source
right.
of perfect morality. It isn't. It's just no question that it isn't. It's a book that was written a long time ago, before people had better ideas and better evidence and better systems for understanding. They didn't know, revelation, a real revelation might have been some mathematical theorem, some pi. Have God reveal the relationship of the diameter to the radius, of the radius to the circumference of a circle, or tell humans that there was a continent in the southern seas as big as all of Europe, or that there were 3 other planets yet discovered, or reveal the microbial world, or the concept of germs, or calculus, anything.
Right.
But it's someone's going to ride in on a donkey. This is not just stuff that convinces you that this is the creator of the universe who wrote a book. It just doesn't make sense. But they didn't know then. They had no real way of checking it out. So
no. Yeah,
it's compelling. But
because it's interesting, Graham. When we were speaking before the show began, I was telling you about some of my influences, and that Buddhism and in particular Zen meditation has come to be an integral part of my life. So that being said, my slant is a little bit different than yours, obviously, but yet I think we find common ground in that the human condition, the condition of people, is one that has, a wide spectrum of experiences. But
It does. I certainly wouldn't deny that humans are, for lack of a better word, spiritual beings. We have profound experiences that can't be satisfied with certain descriptions or so I find myself from time to time almost admiring the religious impulse, although not really, but it's something to take note of and to try to explain. It's I tend to break things down as either propositional or aesthetic. If you're talking about where humans came from, or where the universe came from, or how to behave. You're proposing statements of fact, but all the rest of life, all the beauty that, looking out at the sunset right now and these clouds and the cool air kind of wafting in, that's beautiful, and it's really hard to describe. It's hard to relate to in some ways, hard to put into words. Even, existence, that's such a mystery. It's less of a mystery than it was, and I think the scientific pursuit of existence is maybe more beautiful than the religious explanations. Well, in fact, it is for sure for me.
Right.
But nonetheless,
I take it as science and the systemization of knowledge that is tangible and recordable and provable and repeatable.
Right.
is vital and important.
I guess that's what I was referring to when I talked about the propositional part of life. But then there's that other part, music and little children and
the spiritual
food
or mystical kind.
And the sort of the sense of oneself and the very subtle beauty of being and thinking.
Yeah. So, are you at all affiliated? May I ask you? Are you all affiliated with the Center for Inquiry?
It's great that you asked me that, because I was going to bring it up, and I was going to say about it that it's one of the world's great organizations. It's right here in Western New York, out in Amherst. It's called the Center for Inquiry, and I was giving them money, 20 years ago, and not a lot, but I recognize them as a wonderful organization. It's just a kind of a pushback, a rational pushback against what's really becoming a tragic, delusional...
Blinded by faith.
Really.
There's blindness of faith. Faith is like any other thing that I think that it can be a vehicle that can take you in many different directions, and sometimes one of those directions can be a kind of blindness to what is practical, rational, reasonable. Yeah,
I'd actually go farther, Joel. I don't think there's any religious faith, any belief in a supernatural. If we're talking about supernatural gods, creator gods, personal gods, faith in that kind of situation is always irrational. I just don't see how anything short... moderate religious folks are not doing anybody any favors. They legitimize very pious folks. The 19 gentlemen on those planes a few years ago showed our religious people just how powerful real piety and faith and belief can be.
But isn't that true, Graham? Isn't it true that it is not necessarily... It can be the fixed notion of something. It doesn't necessarily have to be religious. There are many different demonstrations of fundamentalism, right?
Well, yeah. To sort of group the traditional supernatural gods together, and not the ones that are in that giant graveyard that we call mythology, because that's where all of them are going to go. Jefferson's got a great quote about Jesus springing unfathered from his mom, is going to go down with Minerva coming from the head of Zeus. It's just, currently they're considered religions. In the future, they'll be part of mythology. Atheists...
That's actually very interesting that you say that.
Atheists...
I could actually see that. I could see that.
It's simply a historical certainty. If you can't see that, you can't see history. The origins of Christianity borrow almost everything from other religions. There are dozens of gods that are born without sex. They're virgin births. And by the way, I can't pass that without mentioning how unfortunate that is for all women in the world, because, I mean, the term, for example, immaculate conception.
Right.
Now, the word immaculate, we all know, means clean. The implication is as clear as can be.
Right.
All other conceptions are dirty. There's this horrific penalty that women have paid for organized religion.
I don't see it. I mean, I understand. I understand your logic.
If you read the Bible, it's full of misconceptions about women's physiology. If a menstruating woman lays on a bed, sits on a chair, does anything in your home, you've got to wash the bed. You can't go on the chair for days. Yeah. It's absurd. Yeah. The Koran is worse. The Bible's really bad. The Quran's worse in this respect. Women are property. Rape in Islam is a crime that men commit against other men because women are their properties. Anyway, the idea that a holy person, that the Son of God comes without the benefit of sex, is a profound implication to behavior. And
well, I think what it's implied that a deep psychological facet of that is that our uncertainty or discomfort with sex, with that whole.
I can't say that I have any personal experience with discomfort or uncertainty. I think sex is
I mean,
one of the great experiences.
It is, and I'm not speaking on a personal level, but I mean more like collectively in.
I think it comes from our religious teachings and not from our. Freud wrote a great essay called The Future of an Illusion. It's about religion, which he rightly describes as an illusion. I like to think of it, as Dawkins does, as a delusion. But he says that, it's a very short essay, and anyone who wants to read something absolutely brilliant, it's not a scientific polemic or anything. It's just written by a brilliant man who invented a way of understanding something about humans that no one had ever really sort of put their finger on before. But our fears and our uncertainties are at the heart of the creation of religion and normal
psychology, yeah.
Healthy. The first thing that religions do is they create a problem with humans that only they can deal with. Normal, healthy people don't need religion at all. It's only because religion starts by saying you're broken, you're a sinner, that makes them relevant in the first place. Yeah. People aren't broken, they're not sinners, and it's not something that we need at all. We need love and work and food and friendship and beauty, and none of that absolutely necessarily has to come from religion. So many other things in life can sustain us. In fact, we'd be fine without religion, if we did it the right way. We really would. It's certainly in the future.
I mean, how things manifest for people and belief systems and how they shape our behaviors and morals and ethics, undoubtedly has been, religion has been, and has been at the heart of, shaping these things. But religion is it is a power structure and a hierarchy based on man's interpretation of trying to make sense of the world.
To some extent, but not really. I'd have to take exception with you there, Joel. Religion is, in fact, pretty much the opposite of a real attempt to make sense. I mean, it was an early attempt to make sense, but they have systematically rejected, and I'm just going to restrict my discussion to the three religions that I think comprise, 90-something% of the world's population. But they have systematically constructed resistance to new ways. I mean, do you know when Galileo was pardoned for basically discovering the structure of the solar system and thereby the universe?
It's pretty recent, right?
I mean, are they going to take credit for that? The church, and it's the perfect sort of parable for this is Adam and Eve. the apple represents knowledge. The apple tree represents the tree of learning and wisdom. God says, do not seek knowledge. I am all you need to know. Everywhere through Scripture and through theological writing. Aquinas is great at this. He says it's a dangerous thing to teach people anything, just the Bible, and in Latin, so most people can't understand it. But Eve wants to know, and I have to give her credit. She was curious before Adam and to a higher degree. So she plucks the apple because she's curious. She is a human after all. And she's punished for it terribly. And this is great too. All females down the line that had nothing to do with that moment are also thereby punished, apparently in childbirth, that is perfect characterization of how religion treats an independent, rational, a method of inquiry. And frankly, you got to give them credit there too, because they would certainly probably anticipate, hey, they'll figure this out. We got to do everything we can do to make them need this system, and to quell rationality. And the very definition of the irrational is to be more persuaded with less evidence. And that's precisely what belief is all about,
Well, yeah, I mean, you provide some very compelling arguments, and
believe me, they're not mine. They're not my
really
arguments.
They're
very old arguments, but I'm trying to keep them going.
Yeah, no. So what fundamentally are we then, Graham? Let me ask you that.
Well, we're primates that are, I think the story of what we are has to ask, what were we? And then what were we before that? And what are we now? What were we just recently? I mean, there's a continuum. And I think it's safe to say that, when I was younger, I was taught, I was so impressed by the critical rational movement, the Enlightenment, the discovery of the world and the universe and chemistry and all the sciences and this explosion of knowledge and methodology. So for the first 15 years of my sort of, formative studies, I thought, wow, we are rational animals. We are these amazing rational animals. You look around at the world of animals, and there's some clever primates and there's some clever birds, but we compose symphonies, and we know we die, and we can remember things for weeks and weeks. We make tools to make tools to make tools. We're really pretty neat. And yet, so many of us do crazy things and believe crazy things. And it's difficult for me to sometimes really understand why, except as Bertrand Russell says, that we're not supposed to underestimate the habit of our education. Men and women who are born in Topeka, Kansas are raised to believe in Catholicism or Christianity of some sort. Men and women born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, or Mindanao are raised to believe other things. We don't see people in Topeka up and becoming Buddhists or I mean, occasionally, but very rarely.
No, I understand what you're saying.
And yet, if you took that person as an infant and flew them over and had them raised, by Muslim parents, they would come back 25 years and say, Christianity is a lie. There's one true prophet. And, Allah is the true God. And it's just so obvious that it's what they're taught. It's not at all the truth of the things they've been taught. Mm-hmm. It's simply the fact that that's what they've been taught. Their community, their family, their whole environment constructs that belief system and behavior. So clearly that's an indication that this stuff is tenuous. This stuff is arbitrary. The truth is not there. The truth is for some other method of understanding. So the truth that, from your perspective, is that which is empirical and Well, again, empiricism and science don't give us all the answers. But Carl Sagan said it so well. If you don't have the answers, we prefer bad theories to none, which is a mistake. That's why if people don't understand something about a historical event or a question in philosophy, they'll make up a theory that is bad, and they'll go with it rather than just leave it alone.
Trying to make sense of the world.
Yeah, don't if you don't have information, wait. Don't think with your gut, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Look what George Bush did. His gut feeling about this and that. But what we can figure out, we can figure out. And so, you go with this method, which admittedly is very provisional, but you don't claim certainty, and yet you have these amazing systems for predicting and understanding, and we call it science. It's the only thing you can really make claims with, and everything else is aesthetic. Everything else is just your sense of beauty, your subjective, experiences. Which I think is why I have a little problem with some of the meditative. No,
that's okay.
I don't think it's.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think that it's for lack of a better term, rationalists, atheists, whatever. Those folks can go into caves and meditate for a year. They do it all the time. It's not a religious experience per se. It's an intellectual, philosophical experience.
It's a psychological exercise.
Sure, that's what it is. But it remains pretty subjective in my view. That's, when you hear people talk about those experiences and then come to offer. A writer named Campbell wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he said the quintessential hero has to risk his existence on some sort of trip, place that he's not familiar with. Heroism is involved. He's got to overcome obstacles. Then the key is he's got to come back or go somewhere and share the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience. It can't just be some subjective thing that never radiates. So if you say, I know Elvis is still alive. I feel it. When I look at you, I think that you might actually even be Elvis. I just feel that. You can construct any metaphysics with that sentence. It doesn't work as an objective
No, by its
mechanism.
very nature.
Yeah,
its
and
very
so
nature.
it has to sort of sit by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, as a thing to do, it's fine, but where's that end game? Where's that bringing the stuff to the table and saying, here's something that we all can understand? It just seems that that's where it fails, I mean, I'm not saying that it fails the individual. I'm just saying that it's very difficult to translate. And as such, I tend to want to leave it alone, because I have a real specific set of things that I kind of want to do in my life, and subjective experiences aren't necessarily one of them. I have them all the time, but I really want to get them in line so that my wife can relate, so that I can tell my family and friends, so I can write poetry about it, so so that it lasts, so that there's something there,